This show is supported by you, our listeners, who are joining in this episode live. Hoo-hoo! Stick around till the ad break to hear more about that. This is Cup of Go for February 13th, 2025. Keep up to date with the important happenings in the Go community in about 15 minutes per week. I'm Shai Nechmad.
And I'm Jonathan Hall.
You feel anything special going on?
This is a unique experience. I've done some live streams before, but never for a podcast.
It's our live episode, 100th episode celebration. If you're listening to this offline, well, thanks for listening to the episodes normally. If you joined the stream, hi y'all. Thanks for joining.
Jamie just commented, he's so used to listening to this at
1x speed. Actually, the non-live episode, we record at 2x speed, and then we ask Filippo to cut the speed down in half in the editor. Yeah. So we have a pretty cool show planned for today. It's kind of the same and kind of different. So we have a bunch of news items to discuss. GopherCon Israel is coming up, some proposals, some blog posts, some new blogs on the GoDev blog. And then we're going to do a break, the ad break, as normal. You might take a few extra minutes just because it's a live show. And then we're going to do the Go 124 release party. They released it yesterday, which was really nice of them, freeing up all the people for Valentine's Day, right?
That's their motive, isn't it? That's why they won't release it on Valentine's Day. They don't want to ruin everybody's Valentines by having people go to the Go party instead of with their spouse.
Exactly. Their other significant other than the Go toolchain.
Yeah.
So we're gonna we talked about a lot of the features that have been planned for Go 124, but this could be your, like, if you don't exactly remember, if you didn't catch these episodes, we're gonna go over the release notes. I'm actually going to use the interactive release notes by Anton. Maybe you as my reference. So we're going to talk about almost all of the features, like everything that's worth talking about. And because we have our beautiful live stage audience here with us, like Jens, Andy, Frederick, Giuseppe, Jamie, and probably others, we're going to take questions. We're going to take questions from the audience. You shouldn't have discovered that tab, man, on the app.
It's gonna ruin the entire show from now on.
It's gonna be fine. So, without further ado, let's get started, right?
Let's do it.
Cool. First up, GopherCon Israel.
Tell us all about it and why you're not going to be there.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, I'm not going to make it to GopherCon Israel. Luckily, because it's May in Tel Aviv, and by May, I'm not going to be in Tel Aviv because I'm moving. But GopherCon Israel is always a great event. I know the organizer personally. One of them was here on the show, Mickey, our first interviewee ever, actually. And the team includes some people that I've done other conferences with in the past, like Nachshon Tzameret, who came to Orca to do a show, and Yerden Leifenfeld, who was also on the show, and like people that have organized the conference in the past. So if you have enjoyed the conference in the past, you should expect pretty much the same. The conference is still looking for sponsors. So I think that's the best call to action here. If you're working at a big Israeli company that uses Go, thinking about companies like AppsFly or GetTaxi and all the rest, CrowdStrike, et cetera, please consider becoming a sponsor. You know, there's gold level sponsorship, which really, really puts you front and center at the conference. And it's really not that expensive. You get an on-site booth and your logo on the conference website and on all the videos, and you get 5 sponsorships. You get 7 tickets, sorry. And there are 5 available. So you should probably move fast, because if I know AppsFlyer, they already got the first one. And it's great for recruiting, branding, etc. Regarding the talks themselves, I don't know if who's exactly going to talk yet. There isn't a docket yet, but usually it's very, very good. It's going to be a live conference in Tel Aviv, but it's also recorded. So if you will miss it, like myself, you can always watch it on YouTube.
And I'm assuming it's going to be a mixture of Hebrew and English presentations as usual.
Yes. Most years the keynote is in English. And the rest of the talks is depends on the speaker and what's their preference. Sure.
Cool.
But most of the talks are in Hebrew. And it's a dual track. I really hope they do the same this year. All the years I've been, it's a dual track thing. So you have two talks and you choose which one to attend, right?
Yeah. Cool.
So you get to like, you're not just stuck to whoever's talking and whatever schedule you have. If you're not interested in one topic, you can take the other. And they do a really good job of like separating them. You know what I mean? So you won't have two topics about the same subject, like web development, on the same time slot. So yeah, GopherCon Israel is in May. Make sure to prep.
And if you're aware of other conferences or meetups happening, let us know. We love to announce those on the show. I actually saw that Hanover did their meetup, but it just happened yesterday, and I saw it announced like 2 days before, so we didn't have time to mention it on the show. Let us know in advance next time, and we'll mention it on the show.
Maybe we can do a daily show.
There we go.
I don't know if there's enough action going on in Go to do a daily show.
Yeah, I don't know if I have enough time, even if there were.
All right, let's talk about some proposals.
Let's do it. So, Attack of the Clones or something. This proposal has been accepted, and it is the ability to clone hashes. So we can start those clone wars more effectively or efficiently or something. The basic idea, if you're doing a hash, say an MD5 or a SHA-256 or something like that, you basically feed a bunch of data to this hash function that calculates a hash as it's going along. Suppose you had, I don't know, I'll make up a scenario, but let's say you're hashing an email for some reason, right? And you've hashed the email, you have this hash, and now you want to create two versions, one that has your signature and one that doesn't have the signature. Prior to this proposal, you'd have to send all that data twice. Once to get the hash with the signature, and then once again to do it without the signature. With this new function, you could send this first amount of data without the signature, and then clone the hash, and then feed it more data to get the one with the signature. So if you're hashing duplicate data or partially duplicate data, this will potentially improve your performance significantly. The capability, I guess, was already there. It just wasn't exposed through the public interface. So now it's going to be exposed so anybody can use it.
In what use case do you copy something like you've already hashed instead of just copying the hashed value? Like if you're only hashing on the first few bytes and then you add some other things to the digest, you can save on some computation. Is that the thing?
Yeah. I mean, I suppose this would happen like if you're doing any sort of blockchain type of stuff, I imagine. It's not, honestly, it's not a use case I've ever needed, or if I have, I've forgotten. So yeah, I don't know exactly the real world scenarios where it's useful.
Cool. Who submitted it?
Filippo Valsorda, who we've had on the show before.
The usual suspect.
Yes.
Cool. So if you use hashes often and you're looking for optimization opportunities, now we can clone hashes. And if not, you can rest easy knowing the people who actually worry and sweat these details now have a slightly better API to do so.
Yes.
Instead of us mere mortals. Jonathan, you work on Gopher.js, right?
Yeah. I'm one of the
co-maintainers. To
it transpiles Go to JavaScript. Yeah.
Not to WebAssembly.
Not to WebAssembly.
So the next two items on the docket are kind of counterproductive for you.
Well, I can see why you say that. But so actually, the original author of Gopher.js is the one who added WebAssembly support to Go. So they're closely related projects. You could say Gopher.js was the training wheels for adding WebAssembly to Go.
Oh, yeah. So that makes sense. What I was my experience with WebAssembly was I just tried to write a single web page using Rust and WebAssembly, using Yaw. And it was very, very cool technically and very unproductive compared to like how fast I could whip up stuff with like React, which I know pretty well. And then I dropped it. And that was like 4 years ago. It seems like a lot of people have been doing WebAssembly since then for like myriad uses. But this is the first like production enterprise SaaS example that I've seen that makes a lot of sense. It's Dagger.io. Just a comment from chat here. Why did you replace Jonathan with a talking pixel? Bring Jonathan back.
Is my video frozen? It wouldn't surprise me.
It's not frozen. It's just
bad.
It's Prince of Persia levels of quality, right? You look rotoscoped and then pixeled and then bad. Laid on. It's actually kind of retro in a cool kind of way.
I'll take your word for it. Yeah. So I'm on a bad network connection here. I apologize.
So Dagger replaced the React frontend with Go and WebAssembly. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, everybody, like, how do they have time? What's the benefit? Whatever. Jumping to the end, they have a paragraph in the blog post called "Should you do this?" And the answer is generally no. Right? The answer is generally they do not recommend making front ends in Go. There are some serious limitations that they had to like deal with. Memory usage, because you have a limit of a hard limit on WebAssembly applications, 2 gigabyte, which I wasn't aware of. And what Dagger does is like display large traces, whatever. But it's a very interesting blog post where they sort of dive to what's the main reason. The main reason for them, which I think is very different for a lot of other companies that have like, you know, an admin hub or a web UI interface for the users, is that Dagger have a terminal UI as well, terminal UI offering for their product. Mm-hmm. The terminal UI offering is written in Go, and the front end is written in React, was written in React. But they did exactly the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. Also, they had performance issues. The web UI couldn't keep up with all the data it had to process, which again is kind of an edge case. Most web pages just display some text, right? A chart if they're really ambitious, a few images. But they represent like super complex events and traces. That's like their whole thing. It's like a pipeline that you run, with their like function calls and modules and blah, blah, pipelines. And it's like pretty complicated. So the big reason is they wanted to have a single code base that does all this interface work. They had to figure out some stuff to de-risk the project. They're going through it here in the blog post. But the most interesting part is that apparently WebAssembly is slow at parsing large amounts of JSON. I think this is related to what we discussed about with like JSON v2, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember a few episodes ago, you mentioned that really large JSON objects are slow today in Go because of a reason? What was that?
Basically, the I don't know exactly how this translates to WebAssembly, but the standard library Go, or the standard library JSON marshaller and unmarshaller, essentially buffers the entire object before it starts writing or reading. So if you pass in a gigabyte of JSON, it reads it all into memory before it starts parsing it, basically.
So for Dagger, obviously that was a no-go. So they fixed it by, instead of using JSON, they used the Go binary format and used WebSockets to pipe that thing. And, they used some React libraries that they still want to use. So they connected the NPM to their Go, which I assume was kind of ugly, but it did work. And it's really, they rewrote the thing in Go, which is interesting because usually front ends, you don't do Go. And in the end, they recommend not doing this generally. When should you do it? Well, let me ask you first, like you haven't read the blog post yet. Like, what's the use case where you could come, for example, to one of your clients and say, hey, I recommend you rewrite your front end in Go. I think that's the correct choice.
It'd be very rare circumstances. The main thing would be if you had Go libraries that you need to run in the front end, that there wasn't a reasonable alternative in JavaScript. That would be the main thing I would think of. I suppose, like you mentioned, some corner cases around performance and stuff that wouldn't jump to mind as the solution.
Yeah, for sure. They say that if the UI is very complex and React doesn't scale well for it, then you should do Go. If you have a team of very strong Go engineers, and that's everybody you have on your team, which tends to happen in like very if you have a very topic-centric company, let's say you have a very AI research type company, everybody there is going to know Python and just Python, right? Because that's what they did in their academic career and that's it. So it makes sense to do the backend in Python, even though there might be technically like more standard or better options, just because that's who you have. So they're saying everybody on our team is a strong Go developer. So we decided to do it the front end as well. And also standardization, right? If you do the same thing exactly in your backend language and your front-end language, the same display, right? The same view. And they did that because they had a terminal UI. So if you're in that circumstance, I would actually reach out to them. They have a Discord as well. So you could probably talk to them and like, hey, should I do this? I think it's really cool that they've been able to do this because it seems like Go has much better support for WebAssembly than I expected. Seems like even though the Go and WebAssembly combination isn't 100% mainstream, right? Most people don't compile Go to WebAssembly, as we know from the Go survey. It's like good enough to, it defeated their bullshit detector. It works. So a cool blog post from Dagger. The link is in the show notes. Maybe I should put it in the chat as well, actually. I think about it. No, I don't want you. I don't want you all to leave the tab, so I'm not sending it. You'll have to wait until the episode comes out.
Sneaky. It's just like IKEA. Once you enter, you can't leave.
Oh my god, I love IKEA. IKEA, please sponsor us. Can I do a side note?
Yeah.
Can I do like a sidebar?
Sure.
When my wife and I got married, it's in Israel, August, very hot. And we're like wearing the suit and the dress, which is very not what you usually wear in Israel because it's very hot, very humid. And my brother-in-law had the amazing idea, do your pictures with a suit and everything in IKEA. Go to IKEA and then you have like 15 different rooms and settings and all the props. Yeah. And man, that was the best idea ever.
Right? Yeah. I have this theory. You ever played Diablo?
Of course.
Yeah, I have a theory that the people who designed IKEA are the same people who designed the Diablo levels. Like at any point you're standing, it looks like a legitimate room, but you walk 10 feet and you're like, wait, this doesn't make any sense.
It's just a dungeon crawler.
All right.
Back on track. IKEA. If anybody here is a software engineer at IKEA, please sponsor the show. Back to even just Swedish meatballs. We don't need money. Just
All right. So let me try the segue here. This is the part you never hear on the live show where like, okay, what's the segue now?
So you talked about WebAssembly and
So you mentioned in that article they talked about making calls into some other React libraries and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Historically, that has been one of the strong reasons to prefer Gopher.js over WebAssembly. Is because it's much, much easier to do that with Gopher.js. Because Gopher.js transpiles into JavaScript, you literally are running JavaScript. You can call JavaScript functions and vice versa. So your Go code can call JavaScript functions, your JavaScript function can call Go code. Well, now that's less of a benefit for Gopher.js compared to WebAssembly. Because with 1.24, they've added this new Go directive. You can add, it's called Go::wasm export, which effectively exports a Go function so that other WebAssembly code can call it. And there's a blog post that just came out today from the Go team by Cherry Mui. I'm not sure how you pronounce that name. That talks about it. It's a pretty short one. So if you're a WebAssembly user, this would be a quick read for you. Yeah, so that's nice to have that.
So if I write Go code and I add this Go directive, I can call it from JavaScript? That's
from WebAssembly.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's not quite the same as what Go. So you can't just like natively call. You can't your React app can't natively call Go functions. I think you can accomplish that, as you mentioned in your article, but it's a lot more cumbersome than that. It's not as direct. But from another, so if you have some WebAssembly that's say written in Rust, it could now call Go.
And I assume, again, the people this benefits, like the developers that care about this kind of stuff, either work on like super high performance front end applications or work on like very small. No, like if you work on small architectures, do you use WebAssembly as well? Or do you compile to like very small devices? I mean,
some will.
Yeah, I guess like if you're working on Raspberry Pis or things like that. Although I think you can compile Go natively on Raspberry Pis.
Sure, yeah, you can.
I'm just wondering, like, I really want to meet the people who care about this stuff that don't develop things for web applications. Maybe they have just a tiny widget right. in a normal web app. Or
I know that companies like Fastly are using WebAssembly sort of like on the edge, if you will. You know, that to easily and quickly ship router programs, or I don't know exactly what they're doing, but you know, or for CDN delivery, stuff like that. So you know, in situations like that, maybe you want to integrate, you know, some components are written in XYZ language and other components in ABC language, and this sort of makes that integration easier.
Okay, I'm looking at their customer testimonials. The SREs over at Giphy or Jiffy, if you really want to be that guy. They use Fastly and they're happy with it. Not sponsored, right? But if Fastly use like WebAssembly and Go to do that, I'm happy because I'm a happy Giphy user. It's like my second most used feature in Slack.
I imagine a huge number of the websites you use are using Fastly.
Yeah, it's sort of this weird layer of infrastructure of the internet that we were just so used to. Everything is on CDN and everything is fast and everything is we're just used to it, even though it's in reality it's an amazing engineering effort, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this blog post is an official blog post on the Go Dev blog, right?
Yes, it is.
I really like the Go blog as a source of like, okay, this is what they actually care about. They don't post that often, which I think is a good thing. They could talk about like every little thing. Cool. One last blog post I wanted to talk about before the break is very near and dear to my heart right now because I'm working a lot on SQL code right now. I'm implementing a lot of backend, views and whatever at work. That's sort of been like my last week. And then I saw this blog post called "SQL Nulls Are Weird." Actually, sidebar, how do you say it? Do you say SQL now that I think about it, right?
I usually say SQL.
Okay, so you are weird as well. It's SQL. So this blog post is not about Go, and I want to be upfront about that. It's about SQL only. But the reason it popped like into my feed when I searched for Go stuff is because the person who wrote it, Raymond, works on like two Go projects, a company called Convoy.io, which is like a webhook thing, webhook gateway, and another project called LiteQ, which is a task queue over SQLite in Go.
Okay.
So you can create like a queue over your SQLite server, which I imagine is very lightweight, and you can embed the SQLite into Go, and like you can build pretty cool stuff with it. It's a very small, like very clearly a small test project, not a real thing yet. But this blog post goes into the fact that nulls are distinct values in SQL. Did you know that?
Yeah. I mean,
how? Null equals
tried it.
1 equals 1 is true. 1 equals 0 is false. And null equals null is null.
Yeah. You have to do distinct from, at least in Postgres, you have to do this, like A is distinct from B if you want to compare nulls that way.
Yes, but the thing is, if you insert two like the unique rows, but you put null in one of the values, it will let you do that.
Right.
I was like blown away. It was very puzzling to me, and actually was relevant at work at the moment. So whenever I have a blog that's as relevant as this one, and it popped up on Hacker News and whatever, it's a good blog post if you work in databases right now, like me. And then you remember that you have to add these like partial indexes to deal with it, or a generated column or something like that. Like something that is not nullable in reality. You basically add wherever you would put null, you put like something that looks like not a real value.
Right.
Case in point, today I ordered an appointment to get my passport renewed for the flight. And then it had like add it to your calendar. And then I clicked on it, and then it said meeting for object.
Speaking of nulls, I have a notification here in Riverside. It says issue has a Riverside tab, has Riverside open in other tabs. Presumably one of our listeners has Riverside open in 2 tabs, and it displays that with a null value for their name.
Really? So is this happening right now?
It's happening right now. So I do want to mention some things pulled out or mentioned here in comments because I want to. We have a comment here from Andy. It says, not all nulls are created equal. We also have, and then Josh adds, but all nans are.
I'll just say all nulls are empty in their own way, but every initialized value is different, right? You have to leave the media tab.
You have to stop making jokes. It's your fault, not mine. Okay. We're
going to take a short break. This was the first part of the show. This was news. We're going to do a short ad break, and then we're going to do a real 2-minute break. And then we're going to do the Go 124 release party.
Alrighty.
But before all that, obviously we have a lightning round for you.
Oh, yeah.
With lots of stuff to talk about because we're going to empty out the backlog.
Let me bring that media tab back.
Lightning round.
That's a long fade out.
Yeah,
there.
it has a lot of echo.
Yeah.
So you have the first item here, and I'm excited because I'm seeing like one of my favorite URLs, steamcommunity.com. Are we doing Factorio lightning round again?
Something like that, maybe. So there's this bug reported against Steam. I guess it's a bug. I mean, it's also in the Go issue tracker. But certain Go programs freeze when they are launched via the Steam client. So something, I don't know what it is exactly, but something about the Go runtime doesn't play well with Steam. Steam is doing some interesting, weird stuff, I'm assuming, because like, why wouldn't it? It's Steam.
If Gaben says it should, in Gaben,
the issue is long and full of stack traces and process lists and all sorts of weird, archaic stuff. You know, the sort of stuff that your significant other says, "Do you understand that?" when they see it on the screen, and you pretend that you do. That's this issue. Anyway, I thought it was kind of interesting to see this come up on Steam. Now, I don't know that this means that games are written in Go that are produced on or that are distributed by Steam, although it might mean that. But I think the particular case, it's just a little utility program that is part of a much larger game. So I don't think that the game itself is written in Go. But if it is, it probably doesn't work.
Cool.
Yeah, lightning round. There we go.
My lightning round, my first item for the lightning round is another rewrite in Go. I brought a company called Dagger that wrote their front end in Go. Now I'm bringing a company called Lovable, which, by the way, if you haven't heard about them, I haven't used them yet, but I think they beat Wiz for the fastest to 100 million ARR. Don't quote me on that because I might have seen a different company, but they're definitely exploding. Like a lot of people use them. It's AI agents, like just write your app and it builds it for you, like automatically kind of thing, which I don't super love, but apparently it's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
They rewrote their entire Python backend into Go, 42,000 lines of code, and they go through the blog post
in Python or in Go.
In Python,
and I'm curious how many that translates to in Go, if it's more or less.
I assume it's more. Go tends to be more verbose. So it's very simple. The blog post, they just say why we shifted to Go. Their backend is highly concurrent and parallel. That's like their workload. And they built their own dependency injection framework because apparently they didn't like anything they found in Go, maybe, or they didn't know it. But like it helped them structure their code, which I assume makes sense if they use the DI framework in Python. It makes it a lot easier to keep the same structure. Although I never had to use a dependency injection framework in Go, and I've built pretty complex applications. I don't know if you have.
No, I've actually wondered why a dependency injection framework is even useful. Like I've yet to imagine a scenario where that's beneficial, but people seem to think it is because they use them.
I think for them it makes sense because they have a lot of like things popping up and out of the server very dynamically because the agent is doing a lot of things, so it's very non-deterministic, the backend. But it's just an assumption. I don't actually know anybody at Lovable. I think the main number here is that deployments got lowered from 15 minutes just to 3. All request times are faster, 12% on average. And most importantly, and if there are any chief financial officers listening or someone who's on cloud cost, they reduced their server instances from 200 to just 10.
Wow.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And they say that they're like practically their engineers spend less time on performance bottlenecks and just working on stuff like features.
Nice.
So for now, at least, it seems like that rewrite was totally worth it.
Cool. Speaking of rewrites, I want to talk about something that isn't a rewrite, but it helps you rewrite. You ever write bash scripts and then it's annoying to deploy them because it's just annoying?
Yes.
Or they're slow?
Yes. 1,000 times yes.
Enter Bunster. Bunster will transpile your shell scripts into Go so that you can compile them into a single executable binary.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's a pretty cool idea. It doesn't support all features yet, apparently. There's a list of supported features, but it's under active development. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of cool.
Cool. Before we move into the last item on the lightning round, I want to pull some things from comments here. First of all, Andy and Andy, I don't know if it's the same Andy. Thank you for putting the lightning icon for the lightning round. Andy says, well, I don't know which one. I have Go. Oh, I know which one. All right. Define Andy. Andy Williams says he has a Go apps on his Steam Deck and it works great. So Steam Deck is their like hand console.
Oh, yeah.
I did the mistake. Well, if Nintendo wants to sponsor this episode, konnichiwa, arigato, thank you. But as long as they're not, I bought my wife the Switch, which is a great console and it's a lot of fun. But then they announced the Steam Deck like a week after I bought it, and I was like,
surely there's a refund period. You could have taken it back.
Yeah, but she likes the Switch, and also I bought some games. So, but it's a good. Actually, we discovered it's a good platform for our child. So, it's good for like I'm really building on it for the flight, right?
So we've settled the question who Andy is. Andy tells us that Andy is me. So we've got that settled now.
They're like nulls. They're all the Andys are unique.
They're all unique and they're all the same at the same time.
Yeah. And Frederick is saying that he assumes the Go code is 3 times as longer because of if error is different from nil. But I don't know if this is just a signposting for the question mark proposal.
I don't know. I've been doing some JavaScript lately, and if I try to do JavaScript the way I do Go, that is check every function call for errors, it's like 10 times bigger than Go because you have all these try catches all over the freaking place. It's
not a lot of fun. And talking about working in JavaScript, I've been doing backend Go. I've been doing backend JavaScript, TypeScript. That's what I'm doing at work right now. And I stumbled upon this project. It's actually trending on GitHub. There's a project called NVM Windows. This is a lightning round, so I'm going to keep it for 10 seconds. Jonathan, do you know what NVM is?
Lets you run different versions of like Node or something, doesn't it?
Yes, it's Node version manager.
Yeah. Okay.
If you have like 2 projects, let's say your front end is Node 20, but your back end is already upgraded to Node 22, you have to change all your shims, right? Yeah. Same as Python virtual env. So you can use PyEnv to manage your Python versions or UV if you're already upgraded. So same for Node. It's standard for me. It's standard procedure for every Node project I work on. I put the NVMRC file there, and then I'm not worried about version. However, apparently for Windows users, which we know on this show we have, like on the Go community, we have quite a lot. They don't have NVM that works. NVM is not for Windows. So there's a project called NVM for Windows, who was trending this week. There's a new release that came out on January 1st. We kind of missed it. And the fix was very, very funny for me. It's fixed for users who want to install on a drive other than C. Do you remember dealing with all that stuff, all that nonsense in Windows, drive letters and COM objects?
And those weird backslashes.
Anyway, so there's a project called NVM for Windows. If you use NVM in your own Windows, go check it out. The people who are working on it are working on a full-time like company environment manager kind of thing. They even have a LinkedIn. So if this is a real problem for you, consider talking to them. It's Author Software on Twitter, which I found very interesting, that it's such a real problem to manage Node versions that you need a whole company. But yeah, it's kind of a pain in the behind. And your last item is about Qi.
Qi. Everybody remembers Qi, right? Some of you might still be using it. Qi was my go-to HTTP router until 6 months ago. When 6 months ago, 1.23 was released with the new improved ServMux in the standard library. So I've actually migrated 2 or 3 projects for clients off of Qi since then. But Qi recently released a new version, 5.2.1. The only change in this is they dropped support for Go 1.14. Well,
Go 114 until 119.
Up through 119, yeah. So they finally implemented a like policy of which versions are we going to support, and they decided to support the last 4 versions. So not really big news unless you're running an old version of Go and need new features from Qi, then you're going to be stuck.
So there is one last rewrite that I just want to tease, and we'll talk about it on the next episode. The ASDF rewrite.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just teasing it. We'll talk about it next week because I'm very excited about that one. We mentioned a lot of stuff related, like the NVM thing, which is you probably use SDF to run NVM, and writing bash scripts using Bunster and all that. But that's for next week because we don't have time.
And then related to that is the QWERTY rewrite called Dvorak. Where's that? Where's that sound effect now?
No. Don't do that.
Sir, step away from the vehicle, sir.
All right.
Okay.
That's all we have for you for the
I think it's time for an ad break.
Yeah,
and then
let's move to a quick ad break.
Let's do it. Okay, I need that media back again. Where is it?
So I'll just do bam, bam, ba-dum, bam. Da-da-da-dum. Welcome to our ad break. How smooth was that, guys? I feel like since this is a live episode, I should be more like, you're listening to COPOGO radio on all your 5 gigahertz or 2.4 hertz Wi-Fi connections. Traffic looking good today on Docker Hub. Not too many crashes on Docker Hub. If you're pulling, keep pulling. But let's do our actual ad break.
Okay.
Thanks a million to our supporters on Patreon, who, by the way, dictated the date of this show. That's the only poll they had open. But yeah, we have a lot of people in our audience. 40 people. Jamie, Sager, David, Jose, another Dave Cheney. Oh, Dave Cheney. Nice. Kemai Akuyun, Aref Duda, Stephen Clerk, Martin Ruby, Gil Ada, who was actually on the show, Paul Bateau, Code Stank, great name, Michael Haggerty, Thomas Gooder, Ragnarath, Volkan Ural, Simon Law. By the way, if any of you are here, feel free to write in chat because your support is what makes the show tick. Rob Prentless, Charlie TC, Adelina Simeon, who was on the show and you should buy her books, Thomas Gal, Lutz Hanuken, SJK, SK, SK, KSKS. I assume that's not their real name, but if that's the case, Carl Hughes,
we still love you, even
Thomas
if it is.
Bruno, Wilken Rivera, yeah, Kristen von Kitzel, Jamie Tena, a friend of the show who was on the show and is actually on the chat right now. Thanks, Jamie. Just Helberg, Mateus Cuelca, Andy Williams, friend of the show, stepped in for me a few times. The Mind Behind Fine, Mihai Tudor, hey Mihai, Robert Burke, Jens Hillingsil. I don't know how to pronounce these Nordic letters. I'm sorry. Lucien Cafe, Podolinsky Leoland, Frederick Everpil, who's actually here on the chat right now. I see people like saying here on the chat. Will Roden and Josh Bleeker Snyder, friend of the show.
Wow.
Thanks a lot to all these beautiful people. We never did the full run through, right?
No. And thanks for reading those names so I didn't have to because I'm terrible at this pronunciation too.
Jens is not happy with my pronunciation. I'm sorry. This show has ran for 100 episodes.
Yeah,
we started it 2 years ago, just based on Jonathan sending some like phishing messages in a Slack we were both in over 2 years ago at this point.
Yeah, a little more because we haven't done every single week.
Yeah, we've done almost every single week. I think we missed like
we took a break off episodes. Each summer, I think.
Yeah.
So
went through some like, and we kept doing it even through some hard limitations. Like when I was away for 3 months draft, or you moved countries to the States and we had to change the recording time.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you. This is very, very fun.
I agree. Yeah, it is fun.
And one of the reasons it's fun is because I get to learn a lot about Go from you, which is nice.
And I learned from you too. We learn from each other.
Yeah, you mostly get to teach me. Let's be honest here, right? But,
no, I mean, you taught me quite a bit about, especially the security-related stuff. There's a lot of insights there that you have that I don't know about.
And imagine that's the things I can tell you about. But one of the main reasons that it's fun, other than the fact that I'm learning, is the support of our Patreons and our listeners. If you want to join this beautiful community, you can reach us at cupago.dev. That is cupago.dev, where you can find links to all of our stuff. Our Gopher Slack channel, which is where most of the like community chat is going, where we, for example, gave the links to this live episode and ran some polls and people post some cool stuff. It's Kebab Case, cup-o-go. you can email us if you're not into Slack or any of our social media links. We totally get that. I'm trying to cut down on social media a lot. Just email us at news@cupago.dev. That is news@cupago.dev. A little bit inside baseball. It's actually only Jonathan reading these emails. So if you want to shit talk me, that's a really good address to do so.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to be like, you have to replace that.
And you only see the ones I share with you. So
yeah, for sure. You have a full editorial control on that. If you want to support the show, like the beautiful Patreons we mentioned before, you can do that. You can also buy some swag. You can. The people on the live stream can see my beautiful Cupago hoodie and our nice Cupago mugs. Although non-canonically, I think we're both drinking tea right now, right?
yeah, we are. Yeah.
But just to be fair, it's like 9 p.m. here, and I want to sleep at
And
some
it's
point.
almost 2 p.m. here. So yeah, it's not coffee time anymore.
If you don't want to buy swag or support the show financially, that's totally okay. A great way to support the show is to leave a review on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or just wherever you listen to your podcasts. To this podcast. And share the show with a friend, a colleague, a co-student, just wherever you meet other Gophers. Maybe if you're planning to go to GopherCon soon, just share the show and spread the word. I think we would have made it to like 20 episodes if nobody joined and nobody listened.
Oh, yeah.
But since so many people joined and listened, recently we passed 100,000 downloads and, so many subscribers, people talking to us, 100 episodes, lots of milestones. It's a lot because other people are listening and we're like getting this positive feedback from the community. Did I miss anything on the ad break checklist?
I don't think so. I think we're
good.
Done enough ad break. I think we should move on to the release party.
Let's do that.
I like that little organ, like Bob Dylan-esque organ in the beginning there.
It's Context Scarby A200 for all my other MIDI heads out there. Native Instruments. Jens, sipping a Negroni from my Cupago cup.
Love it.
I guess we should add a Peggy rating for the cups.
We need
18+.
shot glasses in our swag store too, I think.
I don't know if
it could be espresso shot glasses or
exactly.
the other kind. Either one would be an improvement.
Yeah, espresso wink. Actually, a good idea, Jens. Maybe I'll put that into stock. Let's get to the release party. Yesterday, yes. February 12th, the Go team has officially released Go version 1.24.0. Jonathan, walk us through the top items. Why do I even care, other than the fact that if I'm using 122, I have to upgrade because it's end of life?
So that's a good question, because I think the things I care about are most in this release are some of the least important things for most people. The thing I'm most excited about, actually, that I'm going to be using the soonest is the new context in the testing package.
Yeah, sync test. You've wanted to talk about that on the show forever.
Not even that. The t.context method that returns a context that's canceled when the test ends.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's going to clean up a whole bunch of context to-dos in my tests. So it's a really minor thing that doesn't matter, really, but it's going to be one of the first things I use. The other one is the slog discard handler.
So discarding logs allows you to just create a silent logger, right?
Yes.
Why would you need a silent logger that does nothing?
You could already create one, but it was more verbose and less efficient. Not that matters a lot in tests, but it's usually for tests. You have an object that takes a logger because during normal operation it creates logs, but in tests you don't want the log output, or you don't want to capture it somewhere, so you can just discard it. So it's intended primarily for testing purposes.
Now here's a question for you: should you test logging? Because I assume if you use the discard handler, you can test it.
You should test logging, but not in all of your tests.
No, I'm not saying test the logger. Like, should you test that the expected log output is being written?
Yes, but not in all of your tests.
In which ones? Just the super important logs that you care about, or something?
I will generally write one test for each behavior that I want to test. So I'll write one test to test that under these circumstances, the correct log output occurs. And I'll write another test to test that under these circumstances, the correct error value is returned, et cetera, et cetera. So let's say I'm testing a function that takes a logger, that uses a logger. I'll probably write one single test, or maybe if there's different types of logs, depending on how it's used, I'll create one test for each type of log. But most of my tests won't test the logger because that's kind of incidental to what I'm testing in my other tests.
So when you use the discard logger, the log itself happens, it's just directed to /dev/null, right?
Basically, yeah.
So if you do some inline computation when you run the log thing, it will happen. That's the thing I'm worried about, because
it depends
a lot
on
of time
how
people do
done.
like log, server.init, and then the response, they just log it. And then if you have a thing that optimizes logs out of the code breaks. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it depends on how your logs are done. So there are some capabilities in the slog package that you can detect whether or not this log level is enabled or whatever. So the discard handler basically says all levels are disabled. So if you're using that capability to probe the logger, then that code will not execute.
Oh, so yeah, that makes sense. But generally, this is more like syntactic sugar because you could already do that.
Yeah.
I, by the way, disagree with you. Like, I never test logs. I think logs have to be incidental. They're not behavior. Every program you have, I should be able to take all the log prints out, and it should behave the same. Because logs are to std error, and the output is to std out. You know what I mean?
So, counter argument, delete all your logs.
I use them.
Then they have behavior that matters, and then they should be tested.
This won't hold up in court. Very, very cool.
The consumer of your logs is very different than the consumer of your application, and that's why the testing is done differently. But if you, as the administrator of the application, need to read those logs, then you want to make sure those logs are working correctly.
So if my view on it is usually logs are for me personally, as the person who's developing the software. But if I'm shipping something, let's say overseas, to like a blocked network, let's say you have to do FedRAMP and you're not allowed to look at the logs and only other people are allowed to look at the logs, only in these like very strange circumstances where I'm writing software and the logs are being written, but I'm not allowed or I can't read them, but someone else has to and has to understand, maybe then I'll consider testing it, but definitely not for every function.
Oh, I don't do it for every function, for sure.
Anyway, the discard logs thing is I've implemented this literally in every project I've worked on, right? You start a test, then you have like a flag for the test of like, wait, I'm trying to debug, but I can't be arsed to open the actual debugger. So just print some logs and I'll add some like 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll discover which line has the problem. Mm-hmm. But usually you don't want logs in your test because you want the test output to be very clean. Yeah. Go test already is pretty good with that, because if I think like it doesn't print output if your tests don't fail. But if you have a different server running somewhere and your tests are like integration tests, having a discard handler is very, very useful. Also, maybe in very security related contexts where like, okay, in this environment, I don't want to log anything like ever. I don't want people to know what the program is doing. This part of the show is like an interview with the people in chat. And they are saying some things.
Yes,
Jamie
we should talk about those.
Is saying that logs are operational data. I don't know if that's an argument for me or for you. I'll take that one for me because the rest agree with you. So I want to have like at least one point. You want to read some of the...
I agree with that too. They are operational data, but operations are important to the program. I mean, I think going on to what Dwayne says next, if you get a bug where something isn't getting logged that should be, don't you want to test for that to make sure you don't regress? And I think that, yes, it's operational data. So the considerations are different, but there's still important considerations that deserve to be tested when they matter.
That's fair. What Frederick says is very close to what I did, which is testing the logs for sensitive information and like very specific expected keys. So you don't test every log or every whatever. You take the entire log output, and then you feed it. I used to feed it to Microsoft Presidio and just look for any sensitive information at all, like secrets, keys, data, personal data, things like that, because all the companies I've worked at have been cyber companies that deal with very sensitive data. So you don't want to accidentally, when you read that data, log it somewhere. And then your promise to the customer, hey, I don't store your data persistently. I do all the processing in memory, right? You in reality, you break that promise because you log it and then your logs are shipped to like somewhere that's very persistent. You store them for like, I don't know, 12 months on CoreLogix or your Splunk server or whatever. Good comments from the Peanut Gallery. Thank you, people. Anyway, my feature to pick out is concurrent map. So the implementation of sync map has changed to a better one. If you're into CompSci and you're grinding lead code right now, it's a concurrent hash tree. So you should go read the code because someone's going to ask you to write it on a whiteboard soon. But it's a better performance, especially for map modifications, for disjoint key sets. It's not going to contend. So if you have like 5 threads updating your map at the same time, they're not going to lock on one another because the maps are laid out in a way that makes sense, that allows like different threads, different coroutines, to talk to different parts of the map at the same time, which sounds now obvious, but clearly it has a lot of edge cases, very difficult to implement. Unlike the t.context one, which I think is one of the simplest pull requests you could read on this on this release. This one is like super benchmarky, algorithmy. I have to admit, I don't fully understand the code. And if someone asked me to implement it right now, I wouldn't be able to. I really like the fact that it doesn't perform better on every benchmark. So it's not strictly better.
Yes, right.
So I love that. I love the fact that it's not strictly better.
There's a trade-off. Oh, no.
Yeah, there is a trade-off, but nearly on every single benchmark, it's better. You could go read the specific benchmarks, but honestly, I think you'll be good just choosing the right one, choosing the default one. And you can, by the way, you can disable the new implementation. Like if you actually have the need for the old implementation, you can disable it by disabling the like Go experiment flag, which I really liked as a feature for a release.
And that closely relates to the other, the general performance improvements. The blog post here says that in general, CPU overhead has been reduced by 2 to 3% across many benchmarks. And this is a big part of it.
Can you show me another language that gets upgraded for you? And you just get like very reliably on every single release between single to double digit performance improvements just by upgrading the toolchain and doing nothing else. We had profile guided optimization, right? That improved everything. Then we had, including compile times, I think 2 releases ago, we also had a really big performance improvement on, I don't remember what exactly, but I remember it was there. This release, it's the maps. You just upgrade and you get better software, which is so rare. Usually most software upgrade gets worse. I love that for us. All right, what's your next one?
Well, I want to hear from the audience what their favorite features are. So while I'm talking here, drop in the chat what your favorite features are, and we'll pick some of those to talk about too. So I think one that needs to be mentioned is the new Go tool command. That's one that I was initially very excited about because it's such a pain in the butt the way it works right now, where to lay out the problem for anybody who's not familiar. If you have a Go tool that you use, let's say to generate some code, like maybe SQLC or something like that.
Or OAPI Cogen, just throwing it out there. No relation or no money being handed to me under the table by the chat members right now.
But anything like that, that you use typically in a Go generate, it's a hassle. It's a hassle. It's a dependency, but it's not a compile dependency, right? It's not part of the compiled output. So you want to tag a version, so you're always sure that everybody on your team is using the same version locally and in CI and during builds. So you have to create this. The typical solution is to create a file that isn't actually compiled into your code somewhere. So you create like a tools directory with a tools.go in it, and you put the dependency there. That way, go.mod picks it up and everything, but it's not compiled in anywhere. But there's nothing in go.mod that says this dependency is a tool rather than something else. The Go tool command is supposed to solve that. Now, side note, I'm not familiar with this interface, but I just saw a little pop-up from Jamie trying to call in to talk about GoTool, and it went away before I had a chance to accept. If you want to try that again, Jamie, we'll give it a shot and see if we can have you on here to talk about that, because you wrote a great blog post about this topic, so I'd love to have you on. Let's try this. Ooh. I don't know how this works.
Nice.
Oh, nice. Hi, Jamie.
Hey, Jamie. I'm listening.
Yeah, like as you mentioned, I was also very excited, and like my blog post was very excited about it. But I am still a bit disappointed. It's not quite as nice to work with. In particular, I get it, but the reason you have to do go tool and then the module path to actually invoke a tool means that you can't just say like go tool lint. It's go tool github.com / blah 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 / command / blah blah blah, and it's not quite as handy as it could have been originally.
Yeah.
I think the Go team is very like the Go project is very much crawl, walk, run. Right? You already have the like final thing in mind, but there are 100,000 people. Maybe 10,000 people who will use this feature in the next 6 months. And then for 125, we could like introduce all these improvements based on the survey feedback, etc. This is a very UX kind of thing. It's not like the maps where straight performance improvements, blah, blah, blah. Like it's no question. Like maybe other people have great justification for using Go tool, GitHub.com, blah, 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 right? But I thought you just run Go tool and then your tool like Stringer or going like, is that not the case?
So you have to use the full module input path, which, and so that's the thing. Like, yes, in the future, maybe they will add aliases and that will drastically reduce that. And then that little bit of the awkward developer experience will go away. But at least right now, it's not. So, yeah.
I feel like it's a step in the right direction, but it's a really awkward step. And I haven't yet decided if I'm going to use it or not. I probably will, but kind of reluctantly.
I think a really good reason to use it that Frederick, I saw a comment from Frederick right now on the chat that a really good reason to use it is because it's going to be in the GoMod file. Dependabot could or any other supply chain security stuff they wouldn't have to parse like Go build tags for things, which I think no vendor offers today. I would be very surprised if like Snyk or any of the companies I've worked at, like security companies, parse build tags in source code to find tools that you rely on. That's going to be pretty difficult because you don't have the full module path there. There you just have like whatever local path it is for whatever company you're working on, right? But now Dependabot or Snyk or Orca Shift Left or any of these offerings could just read the line and say, hey, this is deprecated. This has been discovered as a supply chain attack. Remember last week with BoltDB Go? Like if you used it as a tool and not a compiled dependency, now they could see it.
And so kind of, in fact, like I'm wearing a Renovate t-shirt, not necessarily for this. But I was working with the Renovate maintainers to look at what it would mean to add support to Go tool to Renovate. And due to the implementation of it, and the fact that it is just in your Go mod, but there is a new tool directive which subtly changes things. So, like when you are going to update that dependency, say for instance, you've got OAPI CodeGen as one of your dependencies. Not at all sponsored, but happy to get that. So that will come in as an indirect dependency in your go.mod. And then there will be a tool directive, which also has a dependency on that module. So by default, lots of tools don't update indirect dependencies by default. Mm-hmm. So they need to know that, okay, there is a tool directive for this thing. So now go and find any modules that have that as a prefix and then try and update those.
So it's not. It sounds like it's a lot more built in than trying to parse build tags and just basically guesstimating what tool you're trying to install, right?
But I think so. Previously, if you followed the tools.go pattern, you basically don't get any benefits with this. It's kind of effectively what happens. However, if yes, you were doing like in your makefile go install or like curl to bash to install things like Golang CI lint, you could get support through things like Renovate, and you could have other tools that would manage things. But no, it wouldn't detect it directly from like a tools.go. It would still try and find the things in the go.mod.
Cool. So some improvement yet, but it's a first stepping stone, I guess. While we have Jamie on the phone, what do you think about Omid Zero? I just saw you posted a blog post about that as well.
Yeah.
Although I don't know how impressive it is to find a blog post of you about something, because we're like celebrating our 100th episode. You're like at 1,100 blog posts at this point. Like, what haven't you blogged about?
Well, and someone rightfully so took the mick out of me for posting another very excited post about Go 124. And I think I've kind of found that posting something like this is a great way of getting it upvoted in loads of places, because everyone's like, yeah, this sounds really good. But yeah, Omit Zero is something I am very much looking forward to, because there are cases where you have structs with JSON where you want to have an optional field. But depending on what that type actually is, the best way of doing that with the existing Omit Empty would be to add a pointer to that thing. But that's a little bit painful to then work with, especially if you've got nested things. So one of the options that is now available is use Omit Zero. Then the zero value of that type can get ignored.
So it's not just the zero value. It's also if you have a custom struct and you have a is0 method, it will omit that based on that as well, which I can very easily see how it gets abused to get security information out of, like, mark it as is0 if it has a key in it, so it doesn't get logged and things like that.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
But this is a really cool improvement. The best way to understand it, if Jamie's very clear explanation wasn't clear, is, again, I'm referring you to Anton's live release notes. So he has these like clickable release notes. You can just go click run. You run the first example and it prints name Alice, birth date 0001-01-01 T00:00:00Z. And you're like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. That's Jesus's birthday. Like, that's not the date I meant. And then you run the second example, which is go on 24, and it just prints the name. You're like, nice. And it doesn't involve any pointers or any nonsense like that.
I will say there is a drawback of this that someone nicely actually replied to me on Reddit about, which is you need to be careful when your zero value actually has value. So for instance, like age may not necessarily be something. If age is 0, you don't really care too much. But there probably will be some fields that you actually have to be careful that...
Wait, what do you mean? Age 0 makes a lot of sense. If it's in years, the first 12 months, right?
But yeah, it's the sort of thing that there may be some fields that you have to be careful about and be like, oh no, actually, I maybe shouldn't use the 0 value because that is a valid thing that we need to represent.
Interesting.
Cool.
I love how you had to not omit that someone replied nicely on Reddit, because that's not the usual case. If you omitted it, it's omit 0. We assume someone is being an asshole on Reddit.
Oh, I just discovered I can show comments on screen.
Oh, cool. Sweet. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, if you figure out how to do that as well, write on Slack or somewhere like where people can do that. I don't think we have a lot of show left. I have like 15 minutes. And
if somebody else wants to call in and talk about their favorite feature, we'd love to.
You have like a few minutes. One other feature, which is totally syntactic sugar that I really, really liked, random text. You need to get some random text.
I'm going to use that one pretty quickly too. Yeah.
And you always have to, wait, what about the seed? Oh, I can't use rand. I should use crypto. And then it's a whole pain. No, you type rand.text and you get a cryptographically random seed with a base 32 alphabet, which contains at least 128 bits of randomness, which is enough to prevent brute force today. It's just the most practical, boring feature that I could imagine, right?
But, trying to get random text without that is an embarrassingly annoying pain, in my opinion. It's several steps, and you have to look them up every time. It's not obvious partly because the crypto rand API is just so bare. So I really appreciate this.
Yes. And on that note, there's a lot of new crypto stuff, which we won't go into in this party because the people who already care about it they already celebrated, right? We did have the FIPS episode, so we would refer you to listen to our whole FIPS episode, Federal Information Security.
Frogs in pirate suits, was it?
Yeah, something like that. It was something federal. So the U.S. government tries to do post-quantum crypto. So things you encrypt right now, even if quantum computing does end up working well enough, the quantum computers won't be able to decrypt it, which is very relevant for like your health records right now, right? You don't want someone to be able to decrypt them in 20 years' time. So you should build it safe for the future. So there are there's a lot of new crypto things. There's a new SHA hash function. There's HMAC-based extract and expand key derivation functions and other things. These are just pretty complicated topics to go over quickly.
Yeah,
I think if you're really into encryption and this is relevant for your work, then you should definitely read it. If you're just trying to convince someone, like your boss or whatever, that Go is a good pick because it's secure, you can just say, hey, the new release has FIPS flag, and you can just turn on that flag and boom, you get the certification, which if you've ever worked in a company that tries to sell to federal government, you know it's a huge deal. Huge deal. Any last part of the release you want to celebrate?
Well, I want to pull out a comment here from Frederick. Let me see if I can show it on the screen.
Go ahead.
It's another tool-related one. Go Test now has a -JSON flag, which will output JSON formatted test information. So not intended for humans necessarily to parse, but to integrate with tools like NeoVim or other editors or CI pipelines and stuff like that. So your test output can be more machine parsable. That's pretty cool. And they've been adding features like this to other Go tool subcommands over the last few releases. I think it's a good trend towards making our tooling more integratable.
It also prevents you from having to write the output of the test to some horrible format like JUnit XMLs, just because that's a standard, right? Yeah, I could really imagine. In my last role, we implemented a flaky test service that like took the output of tests and tried to run them all kind of different ways and with different parameters, and then see which ones fail and why, and try to detect and things like that. I imagine this JSON output would have made our lives a whole lot easier, messing around with like really bad formats like JUnit and things like that. But anything you allow machines to do, they'll like start doing, right? That's pretty good. If you want details on this JSON format, because it's not just for tests, it's for Go install and Go build as well, you can just do Go help build JSON. I have to admit, like typing in my terminal, Go space help space something is something I've never done. Have you done that before to look for documentation? The Go blog is just good enough. So let's wrap up. The Go 124 introduced a lot of new features, and I'm, for one, very excited to see what people are going to build with it. We haven't mentioned weak pointers and finalizers and directory scope file system access. There's like a really, really big amount of features in this release, which are also very diverse. I'm really happy for the faster maps, which is very important, and developer experience.
A clarification from Frederick, something that I missed. The JSON output itself has already been there. They've added new information to that output as the new change in 124. So just goes to show that I don't output JSON from my Go commands very often. So I didn't even know it was already there.
So yeah, the build failures one, we talked about it on the show, by the way. You should go listen to that episode.
We talk about so many things on the show, and some of them are accepted proposals, some are upcoming, maybe accept, some are declined. I honestly forget which features exist now and which ones might exist and which ones will never exist. And I've actually found myself trying to use features in my coding that have not yet been approved or approved but aren't implemented yet. Maybe this show makes me worse at coding Go. I'm not sure.
I'd be surprised. So a lot of new features. I think all in all, a great release. I don't know how you compare this one to like previous years.
I don't feel like this is like an earth-shattering release. Like, so there have been some that introduced really big changes. This doesn't feel like one of those. I mean, certainly nothing compared to the addition of generics, but it's a solid release. You know, there's several things that I'm looking forward to.
It's not divisive, I think. Everybody loves this release because it just improves performance and adds some features. Some of which are kind of young yet, like tool dependencies. Some of them are just very useful, like all the things we discussed. And yeah, I think that wraps it up for the show. Jonathan, anything else to add?
Nothing. I think it's a good show. Thanks everybody for listening for the last 2 years. I know not everybody's listened that long, but hopefully we'll see you here again in 2 more years for episode 200. We'll see.
Well, if we're doing dailies, it should be like just a few months.
Yeah, right.
Well, maybe we'll discuss that offline, right?
Or not.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Nice celebration. Program exited. Goodbye.